You want to make sure that this technology, and that's our technology, by the way, it belongs to all of us, doesn't get hijacked by these people who want to use it for bad things and use it to hurt other people, or use it to hurt other people to benefit themselves, right? You want to make sure that this
all of those
technology,
things are important. So we're seeing, particularly in the medical field, right? You're seeing a bunch of lures related to COVID-19. Where people will go online and say, "Click here if you want this or this mask or this," and boom, as soon as you click it, you've got your malware, you've got phishing, you've got business email compromise, you've got in the medical field, right? You've got all those things that we all talk about, but we are seeing it, and we're seeing quite a bit of it because these criminal enterprises in rogue states need to continue. These terrorists they're going to continue to, so they're using all these mechanisms. We're seeing, deceptive practices. We're seeing price gouging, and you hear it on the radio and you see it on TV, but we see it sometimes, almost live. And we work very closely with law enforcement. We work very closely with our foreign counterparts. We work very closely with the financial institutions, right, as well. That are our partners in this endeavor. So you're seeing a lot of those things happen. Just look at our advisory from May 18th, right? I mean, it's going to list out those 22 red flags. And take a look at our May advisory from last year when we sent out our guidance on cryptocurrencies. Those red flags are there. And we're hoping that people will read them, because when you read them, you're saving lives and you're protecting people and you're helping us protect people. So that's a little bit of what we're saying. And don't forget the disinformation, right? I mean, we're seeing that as well. And, we're seeing, unfortunately, cryptocurrency being used to launder illicit proceeds, right? I mean, that's happening out there too, more probably than ever.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's so important. And essentially, if you want to distill that down, what you're saying is, and I think that makes sense, and most of us are going to be familiar with the fact that adaptation is occurring, right? Adaptation by the criminals. I think that certainly we're seeing more people accessing, you talked about technologies, right? Accessing these technologies, different technologies than ever before, which certainly includes the bad actors, right? Sure. And for some of these bad actors that may have had alternative revenue streams, they need to look for new ones, right? Because their operations have been impacted, so they're adapting. But what you're saying is that FinCEN has been as well, right?
Totally. Oh, totally. And it's not just us, right? We don't do this in a bubble, right? We see and are influenced and informed by what financial institutions see and report to us, right? That's incredibly critical. We are informed by law enforcement. We're informed by our foreign counterparts. We just don't sit in a bubble. We're informed by all those things. And just remember, all these criminals and bad actors, these rogue states, know everybody's teleworking, right? How vulnerable, those activities are, right? And they seek to leverage those vulnerabilities. Just look at onboarding, right? Which, when you talk about using AI to fake, faces and voices and, create an onboarding issue for the financial institutions. I hate to tell everybody out there, I don't know how many viewers we have, but it's happening, and you need to be aware of it, and it's scary.
Yeah, I think that's true, and when it comes to phishing, when it comes to ransomware, when it comes to a lot of these different things,
Can I just tell you for a second? Sure. Ransomware, we've had more ransomware now than we did in 2016. It is huge. We're in May of 2020 right now. We have more ransomware. We've seen more ransomware SARS or activity than we did all of last year. Because the money's out there, and the people are out there using perhaps platforms that were maybe not as secure as their platforms at work or other platforms. They're hitting the vulnerabilities, and people just really need to be aware. And apropos to our conversation earlier, remember, this is about the money, right? And so that money's got to go someplace. And, it ends up either in the informal or the formal financial network, and it's up to us to find it and give it back to the appropriate owners.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So You actually touched on I think many of the components of my next question, which is, and you referenced the recent guidance that came out that was also very prescriptive and I think probably very helpful for the industry as well.
Good.
But when it comes to the virtual assets industry, what areas is FinCEN currently focusing their efforts on?
Well, as you know, and you've heard me say this a lot, right? Reporting, the need to report, the understanding that if you're doing business here in the United States, in whole or substantially, you have to abide by our regulations and our laws. Period. I don't care if you've got a brick and mortar wherever in the world. You're doing business, you're benefiting off the U.S. financial system or U.S. financial people, you're going to follow our guidelines, right? And by the way, at the end of the day, that makes you safer too. And it makes your business safer at the end of the day. And let's not forget, what's going on at FATF too, right? They're saying the same thing that we're saying. And that is, know who your customer is. Know who's on the other side of the transaction. Why? Because it saves people's lives. Why? Because it stops people from stealing from each other. Why? Because it stops people from doing bad things to other people. And that's why. So, we're focused on that. We're focused on jurisdictional arbitraging. We're focused on, regulator arbitraging, right? Saying you're one thing, saying you're an apple, but you're really a banana. Well, you know what? Guys, it isn't what you say you are, it's what you do. And that's what we look at the end of the day. So, we're focused on that. We're focused on the anonymizing tokens. At the end of the day, you've got to know, and it's up to all these financial institutions, exchanges or otherwise, who's on both sides of this transaction, folks. That ain't going away. And to say that the technology doesn't exist isn't true. It does exist. To know that, and that's what our expectation is here in the United States. Our expectation, I'm sure FATF has said that already. I don't think they were hiding the ball there. I think that they were pretty clear about it as well. And so we're focused on those kinds of things. I think what we're focused on, Jesse, also, and I think it's really important for us here at FinCEN, is innovation that is responsible. That's what we're focused in on. Because there's so many good things that can happen with the innovation. Let's not let people hijack it for their own purposes. Let's make sure that those good intentions and the realities that there are about technology come to fruition. And it comes to fruition with us being all vigilant, all of us, right? Not just the regulators, not just law enforcement, but all of us, including the institutions and the exchangers and everybody else who's involved in this technology. We want people to be creative. But you don't build something and then say, change the law. That's not the way that works. From the get-go, as you're thinking about these things that you're trying to build or what you want to do, these creative, sometimes wonderful ideas, you also have to understand that there's a rail that you're on and you have to comply with that. And there's a reason. We just talked about what those reasons were, right? To protect people's lives. And to protect their assets, to protect their hard work, and to stop bad people from benefiting from good things at the end of the day. So,
when you said responsible innovation, I think that is so important. I think that innovation is something that the U.S. domestically certainly continues to encourage, and I think that taking into account, to your point, being responsible means being aware, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, of the potential risks that might be associated, right?
Yep.
Or vulnerabilities that might be associated with that.
Yep.
Is that correct? Is that what you're saying, essentially?
You got to think about those things. What are the vulnerabilities in what I'm trying to propose, or what my technology is, or what this service or this product is going to do? That's the way we look at it. How are you going to mitigate those risks? How are you going to mitigate those vulnerabilities? Because I can tell you, the bad guys and the rogue states and everybody else, all those bad actors out there, thinking about that. Mm-hmm. How can I get to what you have and not get caught at the end of the day, or benefit from your vulnerabilities? So we really have a responsibility and an obligation to our fellow citizens and just people in general to make sure that the services and products that we put out there aren't vulnerable in that way, and that we understand those risks and that we mitigate those risks. Look, I think for the first time ever, you saw, FinCEN and its federal regulators, our counterparts, put out a joint statement on innovation. And you saw that. We encourage it, but it's got to be responsible at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. I think that makes sense. So you had touched on my next question, something I really want to speak about, but more than that, more than myself personally, this is something that we have heard from industry. This is something that I have, and we have heard concerns about from global regulators as well, and global governments. And it's something very important that we're very interested in getting your insight on, which is regulatory and jurisdictional arbitrage. And it's something that when you speak domestically, for example, to the domestic exchanges and businesses in the space, they are claiming right now, that you're at a competitive disadvantage because of the kind of very clear structured regulatory regime that we have federally here versus in some of these other jurisdictions. Arbitrage is occurring. They have more lax, let's say, or maybe even non-existent regulation. And in turn, they're at a competitive disadvantage. But also, what we've seen, is in relation to illicit financial flows, a lot of that activity may be going through those jurisdictions as well by way of those operators. So, as regulation space continues to grow in both adoption and application, as I said, this is a concern. Is it a concern for FinCEN?
Yeah.
And if so, how are you, or do you plan to address it?
So I tell you, we address it. Yes, it's a concern. It should be a concern for everybody, right? Because that's sort of the game that they play, right? That we're going to go do business. And you guys see it at Chainalysis every day, right? In the work that you do. So it is a concern for us. So we address it in many different ways, right? We work with our counterparts, like you and with others and our law enforcement. We also work with our foreign counterparts. And let me give you a quick example. We have the symposium, the FIU heads, where we had a whole session, a whole day on virtual currencies and the risks and the mitigation, which we together with some other jurisdictions led and made sure that all the FIU members of FATF understood it, getting everybody on a level playing field at the end of the day, so that not only are we talking about the same things, we're also thinking about the same things, right? That's jurisdictional. So the circle for these arbitragers is closing and closing and closing. You see that in FATF, you see that in our investigations. And by the way, Jesse, I think it's really important to mention, just because you're not seeing an action by FinCEN or our counterparts doesn't mean it isn't happening. And it doesn't mean that we're not working with people, and it doesn't mean that we're not mitigating. But I got to tell you, at the end of the day, yeah, I can understand why people think they might be, at an advantage, but they are not at an advantage. Who's at an advantage? The people who actually have all these rules and regulations in place. Those are the people who actually have the advantage, because they can take that business now, as you can see through FATF, worldwide, right? If you're complying with our laws and our regulations, I can almost assure you that you're going to get that intro into most other, if not all of those other jurisdictions. So you are really building your platform. And if you're not, you're going to have trouble, and you're going to have trouble with all of us, all of the regulators worldwide. There's going to be a time where you just can't hide anywhere, now we have the ability through technology to track people down and to find out where they are and to look at those jurisdictions. Look, you just saw last year we started our global investigations division here at FinCEN so that we can capitalize on the information that we're seeing and go after those places, those institutions or jurisdictions that aren't complying with what we're asking everybody to do, not only here in the United States, but globally. So, we're using a whole bunch of different fora to make sure that our message gets out. And we're using a whole bunch of different other ways, whether it's public-private, public-public dialogue, to make sure that everybody understands it doesn't matter where you think you are. If you're doing business here in the United States, in whole or substantially, you fall under our regulation. And I have to tell you, in the conversation, and I'm sure that there are some FIUs that are tuning in today, they have shown just a remarkable interest in this and a remarkable ability to discuss this and talk about how we can work together globally. I mean, if you just look at Egmont's 164 countries, working together, I mean, it is formidable. And so I would encourage, because we will insist and expect that people are going to comply with our rules and regulations at the end of the day,
That makes
and that's, this is true too. Let's just use a sort of, arbitraging within regulators, right? Domestically. What, you guys don't think we talk? I mean, of course we do. Our staffs meet regularly, if not weekly, even now. Just because we're not in the office place doesn't mean that we aren't doing our jobs and we aren't discussing it and we aren't talking to our fellow regulators on a regular basis. So, yeah, you can think you're doing X, but if you're really doing Y, we know.
And more than that, if you tell them that they are doing Y, right, they should believe that and understand that and accordingly take necessary actions.
Hey, look, Jesse, I think this is true for all the regulators. We're not looking for more people to regulate. But if you're in our space or in our industry, we're going to regulate you. Why? Because it's important for reasons that we talked about earlier. Oh, also, it's important for the other businesses who are complying at the end of the day and are doing what we're asking them to do. And, in a related, in sort of a related way too, for those financial institutions, exchanges, whoever out there that see these things, you should be reporting it. And you should be including it in your reporting, whether it's in your SARs or otherwise, so that we can look at patterns, look at trends, identify, institutions, entities, or whatnot that are not complying so that we can either make them comply or put an end to them at the end of the day, right? So, this isn't just a one-way street here. This is a back and forth. This is what partnership is about.
That's I think going to be very informative for a lot of the audience, and I will follow up on my last question, and I believe you answered this in part, but even more clearly, based on our research again, one of the things that we've seen is that potentially some foreign exchanges may believe that their location will put them out of the reach of U.S. regulators and law enforcement. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that is a misconception. That is a fallacy. That is folly. If they are doing business here in the United States, in whole or in part, they don't have to have brick and mortar here. They don't have to have a person here. Then they fall under our jurisdiction, and we're going to enforce it, and we're going to make sure that we do that. And it is a focus for us here at FinCEN to make sure that people who think that they're out of our reach but aren't are taken care of, are looked at, are investigated, are making them comply at the end of the day. I don't, it's funny. And if somebody has a question, just ask. We're happy to have the conversation, right, at the end of the day. But I tell you, it really is important for all of those people out there who are in this industry. If you see that happening, report it appropriately. Because it's going to be important for us to know. I cannot emphasize enough, Jesse, how much, and I say this all the time, how much financial institutions are the front line in what we do. How the work that you do, and for better or for worse, in my job, I get to meet just 1,000 people, right? I get to meet CEOs, I get to meet tellers, I get to meet people who do compliance. I love it, right? And at the end of the day, the job that we do is really important. It has a profound effect on people. So when you see these kinds of things happening, you got to make sure that people are complying.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And at the end of the day, that kind of financial integrity leads to a safety, which is what you're saying all along, and so important. Again, so next, you touched on data and you touched on reporting. And I think for the audience, for the attendees, I think that this is also going to be extremely valuable. The first time that I learned more about this was actually at the inaugural first FinCEN exchange for virtual currencies, which I found to be so informative.
Me too.
As a follow-up, I think it's really important. You mentioned this at your consensus speech recently. Can you tell us a little bit more about the 2019 STAR reporting stats that you received? And also anything you can share about reporting that has come in from the VC industry, from the VC space, that is particularly helpful and supportive FinCEN investigations.
Yeah, Jesse, one of the frustrating things about stats is, you can sort of manipulate them to say what you want them to say, I suppose. But, and if you look at the stats and all the SARs that have been reported since 2013, I think it's pretty important. But one of the comments that I heard, and having been a prosecutor and a trial lawyer for 30 years, I know this is just such a folly, that were the prosecutions, but it's not about prosecutions all the time. In fact, that's probably the smallest percentage. What it is about is getting good insight, getting good intelligence, using these SARs, in other words, the information that we're asking people to put in there so that we can do trends, analysis, patterns, give financial institutions red flags so they can protect their customers or the industry and do all those things. So it's not just about cases and about prosecutions, which, that isn't the center of my heart, as you know, in my soul. But it isn't all about that. It's about technology and getting that nice. Now, what is important that we see? IP addresses. Bitcoin addresses, who are the counterparties, phone numbers, all of those things, these things that some people might think are little or basic, including that in there, depending on the typology, is going to be really critical. Just look at our 2019 guidance that we issued last year on cryptocurrency. You're going to see some of the information. There's a whole section in there about what is important for law enforcement, right? Or other financial institutions, right? What is important for them to know and see about? It's listed right there. I think those things are going to be really important. Look, stolen identity, that happens all the time. And we can use the information that we get to prevent that from happening. Most of the SARs came from, the reporting exchanges and brokerage firms and MSBs, and they talked about suspicious activities or, lack of knowledge of where the funds were coming from, stolen identity, victimization scams. All of those things are important, but I think there are other crimes that are important too that we need to start taking a look at, especially now that we know, and we've talked about this, that cryptocurrency is being used even more now during this COVID-19 crisis, and we need to be a lot more vigilant about it. So that's my thought. I mean, for those people who are curious of what they should be including in these typologies or in their reporting to us, just take a look at some of our advisories. It's all right there. It's stuff that you, as a person, would want to know. Bank account numbers, is business email compromise. Where did it go? When did it go? Right? To what IP address did it go? Right? Those are the kinds of things that I think are important for us to remember. It's that one little nugget that you would be surprised that law enforcement, and you see it all the time with Chainalysis, right? It's those little things that, boom, we've got this. Right.
So true. And to your point, again, building out those typologies, identifying those red flags,
yeah.
And, becoming more familiar, for some of the industry anyways, becoming more familiar with SAR reporting and filing and the value that it provides to your regulator, and in turn, the value then that it provides to your institution or your organization, right? And the safety and security that that's going to provide. I think is going to be extremely valuable to the audience, honestly. So I have one more question for you, which is more broad, and it's just,
Is this the hammer question? Is this where you're going to come down on me and some?
Yes. Aha. No, nothing like that. No, it's more, and very specific to crypto and kind of to the VC space. But just as, if there's something that keeps you up at night that you've found in relation to this space, what would that be?
Oh, wow. That we don't know who these people are. That we're actually, it's even deeper than that, that we're allowing a technology that can be so beneficial to be hijacked by people. And we're not realizing that that's what could happen if we're not vigilant. This is ours. This technology belongs to all of us. Don't let a few people steal it for bad acts or rogue states use it to do bad things. It's innovation that I think can be helpful across the board for all financial institutions. And we need to be vigilant to protect it, and we need to be vigilant to protect our national security. So that keeps me up. I think I worry about too that people aren't really thinking about what's behind what we're asking them to do. So as often as we can, as we talked about earlier on in our conversation, the importance of it. in really understanding the human effect that it has on people's lives, right? Schools aren't being built by kleptocrats who are laundering their money overseas or in our country. People don't have, ability to go to a hospital because a hospital wasn't built in another country because they stole the money. Or even here domestically, as we talked about, opioids, elder fraud. Really, and it's despicable, Jesse. It's despicable that people right now in a COVID-19 crisis are taking advantage of people's fear, of disinformation, of their weaknesses and vulnerabilities. That should piss everybody off. And for that reason alone, people should become more in tune of what they can do and do their part, right, to make sure that this doesn't happen. Because the little things that you do, the phone call that you make, the note that you say, the IP address that you put in your SAR reporting or phone number, what have you, could save somebody's life.
Fantastic. Well, I think that this has been so informative. I can't thank you enough for giving us this opportunity, Director Blanco. I know how extremely busy you are. As you've said, operations have not slowed down or ceased. If anything, they've increased for you.
Yep.
So thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today and to provide this insight globally to the audience that we have today. We will have a recording sent out via email this week. It'll be on the Link's virtual landing page where you can check it out with other sessions. And next week, the last thing that I'll say is I'll be sitting down on June 3rd with Wylin Kwok, who is the Senior Executive Director of Abu Dhabi Global Markets. And we'll have a link out later to sign up on the Twitter channels as well. So again, we appreciate your time. If you have anything you'd like to say in closing, sir, the floor is yours.
Jesse, thank you so much, and thank you for doing your part, right, in this effort, and for providing this forum to us. And I want to thank you for that. And I think we've said it all, right? Thank you for a nice, good conversation. Happy to do it again. I think this really helps out industry. They are our partners. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we keep our country safe and that we keep people safe at the end of the day, and that innovation continues to move forward in a very creative way, as long as it's responsible innovation. So, Jesse, thanks again for the forum, and thank you for having me, and hopefully we can do it again.
We will.
All right, Father. Thank you. Bye-bye.